Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. First of all, I want to thank you for being here. It's wonderful when so many, especially from your hometown, show up. I'm a Baltimorean by birth and raising and so on. Outside of 7 years, I've lived my whole life in this area. But I am glad that you're here, and especially for this occasion, because this really is a new piece of material. But tonight, as you know, is the 13th day of November, and within a heartbeat, Christmas will be with us. And I'd just like to tell you a very, very heartwarming, wonderful Christmas tale about a little 10-year-old boy who wanted a bicycle for Christmas. And he started in July working on his mother and dad. I'd love to have that bike. And when it got around to the first week of December, he thought he'd get a little help. And after school one afternoon, he went up to his room, and he took out some writing paper, a little pad on his desk, and he thought he'd write to Santa Claus, and then it hit him. Why not go above Santa? He'd write a letter to God. And he did. Said, "Dear God, if you help me get that bicycle, I will be good for a whole year." Well, he looked at it. He knew he couldn't be good for a year, and he crumpled that one. "Dear God, if I get the bike, I'll be good for 6 months." Not that one. And he kept bringing it down, bringing it down. Finally, he got to 1 week. I will be good for a whole week. And he looked at it, and he knew he couldn't play with God. He knew God knew him better than he did. And he knew that he had trouble being good for a whole day. And he crumpled it and threw it away, and he was just perplexed, didn't know what to do, when his eye struck the statue of our Blessed Mother on his dresser. And he just lit up. He got a towel and wrapped the statue in the towel, put it in a shoebox, put it in the farthest corner in his closet, covered it with 3 or 4 blankets, and with a triumphant look on his face went back to his desk and wrote, "Dear God, if you ever want to see your mother again..." There's some wonderful, of course, stories about heaven and so on. The latest one I heard is these 3 fellows got to the gate, and they made it. They were to go in, and our Lord said to them, "Well, before we enter eternity, is there anything I can do for you?" And the first one said, "The arthritis in this left shoulder is about killing me." Put his hand on it, was cured. And another one said, "My knees are so bad I can hardly walk." He put his hand on them, and they were cured. Third one said, "Don't touch me, I'm on disability." Forget the miracles. It wasn't too long ago when Pat got a request from a lady in Georgia for me to come down and give a talk at some gathering there. And she gave the title of the talk that she wanted me to give, Recovery and Forgiveness. Well, I didn't have anything as such on that, and I had to work on it. But it was then that they decided at home that perhaps it would be a good idea to develop a piece on that and do something with it. And I've done it twice, once down there in Georgia and once to our own community at Ashley. And I am pleased to say and blessed to know that it is helpful. It's very helpful to troubled, addicted people. Recovery and forgiveness. Now let's go back pretty much to the beginning. You know that in the account of creation, after the various phases of creation, God looked at what he had done and saw that it was good. And he made us good. Human beings by nature are good. Something happened along the way and we became very damaged. And by the way, it was not the apple in the tree that caused the mess. It was that pear on the ground. By the way, one day in paradise, Eve looked at Adam and said, "Adam, do you love me?" He said, "Who else?" Well, the damage is this, and we've heard the words before: the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. St. Paul once said, "The things that I would do, I fail to do. The things that I would not do, those are the ones that I do." And that's pretty much characteristic of our human nature. We are simply weak, and we tend towards that which is not good. I'm not here this evening as a Catholic priest. Everything that I say will be based on what I've learned from the 12 principles of AA and how they should govern our behavior, as a changeover from what the behavior was before. I believe that you all have heard the word ethics. You usually take ethics courses in college. Ethics is natural morality. It is the human mind arriving through reason, without divine revelation, without religions entering into it, telling us anything. Ethics is natural morality based on thought. And it is one single principle. Good is to be done, evil is to be avoided. And that's a basic. Now, what is good and what is evil, people have different ideas about, but what we're interested in is that basic principle: you do good and avoid evil. And mankind, from the beginning, have functioned according to that principle, that when you do good, you are pleased and happy and fulfilled, and when you do the opposite, it gives birth to unhappiness and misery. Now, we in this Western world are far from a Judeo-Christian ethic that accepts the Ten Commandments, which are wrapped up in the single phrase, the golden rule. Treat others the way you would like to be treated. AA teaches, live and let live. God reserves 3 rights for himself out of the 10, and he gives mankind 7. Now, it's up to us to respect those rights. You have a right to your life. You have a right to your own body. You have a right to your property. You have a right to your good name. When I break any of those things, that's what we call sin, or in the world of justice, crime. And we do that all the time. Now, good is to be done, evil is to be avoided, and I want to do the good, and very often I don't. I fail. Very often I want to avoid the things I should avoid, and I run right to them. Now this is ordinary people. Ordinary people, good people, find that it is hard to be good. Now let's enter the world of addiction. You know as well as I do, it's very difficult to be good even when it's easy. You're going along, let's say you've just made a retreat and somebody makes a nasty remark and everything in here wells up. You want to punch them out. That's the way we go in here. The human soul just leans toward those things of license rather than true freedom. We want to do what we want to do. Drug your conscience and see where your behavior goes. If it's hard to be good when we are in command of ourselves, try being good when you drug your conscience. I've tried this in treatment centers with patients. And I always tell them, please don't put your hands up. But be honest enough to answer this question inside of your own soul. Have you ever, in your life, ever, deliberately taken a couple of drinks or a drug in order to be able to do something that you know you couldn't do sober? Live that way for a while and see where you wind up. The result of all wrongdoing, whether it's a positive act that does something that is forbidden, or a negative act of not doing something that I know I'm supposed to do, it results in a phenomenon that we call guilt, and we would be lost without it. Don't ever let anyone, so-called professional or not, try to talk you out of guilt. If we did not feel guilt over some of the rules we break, then the sky is the limit. We'd all be living like pigs. Guilt is based on the terrible shame and embarrassment that I feel when I know I have broken the rules that we are all supposed to keep. Now, I know this sounds like a first-grade class, but I mean, it's not only essential, but we all know this. I'm just reminding you of it. We all feel guilty about the bad things we do. We should. The shame and the embarrassment, and it begins to build up and build up and build up, especially in addictive people whose negative immoral behavior is dictated by their illness. Ladies and gentlemen, Alcoholics Anonymous, I think, is one of the only therapies on earth, if not the only, that dares to acknowledge morality. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of our lives. Wherever you hear the word moral, any form of it, it has to do with the rightness or wrongness of human behavior. Compulsive drinking, coupled with living the lie of denial, and the following aberrant behavior, has to result in utter misery of soul, because we know that we have become separated from God. We're not living the way we know He wants us to live according to these 10 rules. And we don't know what to do about it. We hate ourselves, and our relationship with others is all shattered. By the way, those 10 commandments, Moses came off of Mount Sinai one day and he had the 2 tablets. He said, I want you to gather around. I got some news. I got good news. And I got bad news. The good news is I got him down to 10. The bad news is adultery is still on the list. We know that when we begin to make up our own rules and our own interpretations of these commands, we get into trouble. And the guilt builds up and builds up. Now we see the wisdom of AA in steps 4 and 5. Why do we make an inventory of our lives? To show us that in spite of the sinfulness of our lives, we're still good. Ladies and gentlemen, I've done some good things, wonderful things in my life, and so have you. Don't deny them. Don't let the guilt overwhelm you, but don't wash it away. The guilt has been earned, and we deserve what we earn. Now what are we going to do about it? The only thing that will dispel guilt is a realization that I have resolved it by being forgiven. And that's what tonight's talk is about, forgiveness. We admitted to God, to ourselves, and one other human being the exact nature of our wrongs. I cannot live sober with unresolved guilt of my past. It's too horrible. Allow me, please, to say something that may be of help. If there are any of you in this room who honestly feel that you have done things so horrible, God will never forgive you. God is not only different from us in degree, but in nature. In God, everything is God. He is love. He is mercy. He is compassion. He is forgiveness. And any human being who honestly believes that he could commit any sin or crime bigger than God can forgive is really guilty of a perverse kind of spiritual arrogance. You're just not that good at being that bad. There is nothing bigger than God can forgive. Please remember that. And so we approach God to be forgiven the breaking of any of these rules that He gave us to live by. The emphasis is on asking. Ask, and you'll receive. And God is forgiveness. And so sorrow for what I have done is the absolute condition for forgiveness. I must be sorry. What's that mean? Sorrow looks towards the one offended. I am so sorry that what I have done has offended you. And I guess we could say, I really didn't mean to. Ladies and gentlemen, every single thing we do is meant to please ourselves. We don't wake up in the morning and say, how can I offend God today? Give me the list. I think I'll pick out number 4. We don't do that. Everything we do, to a greater or lesser degree, we do for self-fulfillment. Read a book, take a nap, eat a meal, go on a vacation, talk to a friend, help the old lady down the street do her shopping. Even difficult things, if they're done for others, we gain a certain fulfillment out of it. Now, many of the things we do to please ourselves, I just named a list of them, perfectly good. Many of the things we do to please ourselves are against some of these rules, perfectly bad. So I don't wake up in the morning in order to offend God. I function in order to please me, but some of the things that I do to please me are against His rules. That's what we call sin. And I go up to God and say, look, I didn't mean to offend you. I meant to please myself, but I broke one of your laws. I am sorry. What does sorry mean? It means I'm going to try as best I can not to do that again. I may do it again, but I don't intend to. And so forgiveness depends on my sorrow for what I have done, and it is guilt. My guilt will prompt me to that. I don't want to feel miserable inside of me. I don't want to feel towards me the way I do. You've heard me say so many times, I believe that one of the greatest gifts that God Almighty can give addicted people is to allow them to look into a mirror and experience an undeniable, overwhelming desire to vomit because you just can't stand what you're looking at. That is a plus. That is a blessing. Because many people can't see the evil that they have done in their image. Trying to justify the way I live, I build up justifying answers when I'm accused. When all of that is stripped away, I find that there is not much in me to be proud of. Apart from the sorrow, I'm sorry, Lord. And He does want to hear those words. I'm sorry. And then there may be a price to pay, some consequence of my behavior. I remember in one talk I used the example of a little kid. He was hitting a baseball, and it was a very windy day. And about the third or fourth time he hit the ball to his buddy out in the outfield, the wind caught it and drove it right through a neighbor's window. Well, he didn't intend to do that. But he walked up to her house, rang the doorbell. He said, "Mrs. Smith, I'm the one who hit that ball. I didn't mean to, and I'm terribly sorry." She says, "I forgive you. That'll be $12.95. You pay for the glass. You pay the consequences of your behavior. In the days of Wine and Roses, you remember that film, of course. It was absolutely excellent. Jack Lemmon played a young yuppie on his way up. And he and his wife were both alcoholics. And they lost everything. And he had once, his father-in-law was a florist, and he had a hothouse. And Lemmon had hidden a half pint of whiskey in a flower pot. And the compulsion to drink the morning after the night before was so great, he forgot which coffee pot he had put, or which flower pot he had put the bottle in, and he went through that hothouse destroying everything in his way till, trying to find that bottle. And he did about $500 of damage. Well, anyway, AA found him and he got sober, and on his way back to a normal life, he had a job as a taxi driver. And he saved something from each week's pay. And when he had the amount to take care of that debt, to fix that hothouse, he went up to his father-in-law and he said, "I owe you this." And his father-in-law said, "I'm not interested in that. You're making your way back. What we need to be interested in is getting my daughter sober now." He said, "Dad, I understand that. It may not be important for you to accept this check. It is very important for me to give it." And the father accepted it. I remember in the story of an alcoholic priest friend of mine, he used to help out at a parish where, after the last Mass, he would drink an entire water tumbler full of the altar wine. And he figured that before he got sober, he must have drunk about a case of it, but it kind of went out of his memory after he went into treatment. He was sober 8 years. 8 years. And they were having a meeting in somebody's home. The poor guy couldn't get out to meetings. He had to be there with his children. His wife was in the hospital. So there was a small group used to bring meetings to his house. And it came up to the making amends step. And it occurred to this priest that he hadn't paid for that wine. So he went down to the rectory. He and the pastor there were good friends by this time. And he had a check for the amount of a case of wine. And he said, "John, I owe you this." He said, "What do you mean you owe it to me?" "Well," he said, "I drank that case of your wine in my drinking days." Well, he said, "I'm not interested in that." He said, "You may not be, but it's important for me to give it. Give it to the poor, use it whatever way you want." And the priest who was pastor of that parish understood completely and accepted the check. It is important not only to be sorry, but to show it by paying the price.